Hello. Grandma wants to tell you another story, but I want you to say hi to Shadow first. Shadow, come say hi. Look, look. Look. There. Can you see him? Well, for a minute anyway, I guess. Maybe he'll go behind me and lie down. Anyway. Well, you see his ears a little bit. No, he's going to lay down right beside me. Well, the story I wanted to tell you today is called Siegfried's Sword. Once upon a time, there lived a young prince by the name of Siegfried. His father was the king of a rich and prosperous country. The king was known both far and near as a wise and just ruler. His mother was lovely and kind. Neither the king nor queen left anything undone that might make the young prince more fit for a useful life as leader of his people. Wise men were brought from far-off lands to be his teachers, and every day something was added to his store of knowledge or skills. Siegfried became so skillful in games and manly feats of strength that no other youth could throw the spear so great a distance or shoot an arrow with surer aim. No other youth could run more swiftly or ride with more graceful ease. Can you tell this was from a long time ago? But the king knew that a man's life is not just a pastime. Work is noble, and he who wishes to win fame must not shun toil. That's true today, too. Work is noble. Even princes should know how to earn a livelihood by the labor of their hands, he told his son. And so, while Siegfried was still a young man, his father sent him to live with a blacksmith called Mimer. For in those days, the work of a smith was looked upon as the most respectable of all trades. Mimer was the wisest and most cleverest blacksmith the world had ever known. Siegfried then was sent to Mimer's school, where he would be taught to work skillfully and to think wisely. He was treated like all the other pupils there. Instead of his fine, costly clothing, he wore a coarse blue shirt, heavy leggings, and a leather apron. On his feet were awkward wooden shoes. His dainty bed was given up for a heap of straw in the corner of the workshop. The young man did not complain of these changes, nor of the plain food he ate. There goes Shadow. The days were happy, and the sound of his hammer rang cheerfully, and the sparks from his forge flew from morning till night. And a fine smith he became. No one could do more work than he, and none had greater skill. The heaviest chains and the strongest bolts were but as toys in his stout hands. So easily and quickly did he beat them into shape. Yet he was skilled with work of the most delicate and brittle kind. Of all the students, there were none who learned faster. One morning, Mimer came to the workshop with a troubled look upon his face. The pupils soon learned what it was. A man by the name of Amelias. It's a different name, huh? Amelias. From a neighboring country had made a suit of armor, which he boasted no stroke of the sword could scratch, no blow of spear could dent, and he had sent a challenge to all other smiths to equal that piece of workmanship. Mimer was too old to accept the challenge. Who among you is skillful enough to forge such a sword, he asked. One after another, the pupils shook their heads. The foreman of the pupils spoke. I have heard much about the armor and its extreme hardness, and I doubt if any skill can make a sword with edge so sharp and true as to pierce it. The best that can be done is to try to make another coat of armor that will equal that of Amelias. Then Siegfried quickly said, I will make such a sword, a blade that can pierce any armor. Give me a chance to try. The other pupils laughed in scorn, but Mimer stopped them. You hear how this boy can talk? We will see what he can do. We know that he has uncommon talent. He shall have the chance to make the sword. Then Siegfried went to his task. For 7 days and 7 nights, the sparks never stopped flying from his forge. The ringing of his anvil and the hissing of the hot metal as he tempered it were heard continuously. On the 8th day, the sword was formed, and Siegfried brought it to Mimer. The old teacher felt the razor edge of the bright weapon and said, "This seems to be a fine edge. Let us make a trial of its keenness." The trial was made, and the delighted old smith cried, "Well done! Never have I seen a keener edge." But Siegfried was not satisfied. He took the sword again, and for 3 more days he worked with the white-hot sword and tempered it with milk and oatmeal. Then, in sight of Mimer and the pupils, he threw a ball of wool upon the flowing water of the brook, and as it was carried by the flow of the water, he brought the sword to it. The wool was parted as easily and clean as the water, and not the smallest thread was moved out of place. Then back to the workshop went Siegfried again. His forge glowed with a brighter fire, and his hammer rang upon the anvil with a cheerier sound than ever before. For 7 weeks he worked at his forge. Then, pale and haggard, but with a pleased smile upon his face, he stood before Mimer, with the gleaming sword in his hands. "It is finished," he said. Then Siegfried raised the blade high over his head, and the gleaming edge flashed like lightning. Suddenly, the blade fell upon the anvil, and the great block of iron was cut in 2. The bright blade had not even a dent from the stroke, but the edge seemed even brighter than before. Mimer exclaimed, "If his armor can withstand the stroke of such a sword, then you should not be ashamed to be his pupil. If this good blade is what it seems to be, it will not fail you." When the time which had been set drew near, Siegfried, bearing the sword, followed by his teacher and the pupils, walked to the place of the meeting, which was on the line between the 2 countries. Great numbers of people from Siegfried's country and the neighboring country had already gathered, anxiously waiting for the coming of the champions. On one side were Siegfried's father and mother, the king and queen, and their knights. On the other side was the king and his followers from Amalias's country. When everything was in readiness for the contest, Amalias, clad in his boasted war coat, went to the top of a hill and sat upon a great rock and waited for Siegfried. As Siegfried climbed up the steep hillside, Amalias smiled down at him, for he felt no fear of the slender, gleaming blade that was to try the metal of his armor. Siegfried's friends waited in breathless silence, hoping and yet fearing. Only Siegfried's father whispered to his mother and said, "We have given our son the best training possible. Knowledge and wisdom is stronger than brute strength." When Siegfried reached the top of the hill, Amalias still smiled at him, for he felt that his contest was mere play for him, and Siegfried was already as good as beaten. Siegfried paused a moment to ask, "Are you ready?" "Ready," answered Amalias. "Strike." Siegfried raised the gleaming blade in the air. The muscles of his arms stood out like great ropes. The sword played like lightning around Amalias. The crowd on the plain below expected to hear the noise of clashing steel, but they listened in vain, for no sound came to their ears but a low hiss Amelias sat unmoved, but the smile had faded from his face. "What do you say now?" asked Siegfried. "I'm not sure what to say," answered the challenger. "Shake yourself," cried Siegfried. Amelias did, and lo, the armor fell in pieces at his feet. A thundering noise at the foot of the hill proclaimed Siegfried's victory. Siegfried had been taught well. Wisdom and knowledge had proved stronger than brute strength. He worked really hard. He put to practice all that he had learned and worked hard, and he was able to defeat the challenger's armor that the challenger thought was just so strong that could never be beaten. But the same thing holds true today. If we work and try to gain knowledge and understanding, that is even just better than brute strength. Remember, Grandma loves you.